Hey there Titans, in this video we'll talk about variables and populating variables from URL parameters. Alright, so let's add a couple of variables. I'll choose here to use global variables, but please watch our videos about variables explaining when to use which. And what we want to do is whenever we want to set variables from a parameter, we always want to use static variables. Either page or global variables, but always has to be static. Okay, so we can give it a name, any name you like. In this instance, I'll say ACCID, and we will say variable2. And what we want to make sure here is whenever we work with variables, we want to go to Tools, Enable Debug Mode, so whenever we preview, we can see what we're doing with the variable. All right, so if I look at the debug now, I can see variable2 is empty and account ID is empty. All I need to do in order for me to populate this is just use AND. This is preview, so I'm using AND because I already have a question mark here. Otherwise, if it will be a publish URL, you want to add a question mark, variable name equals value, and you can concatenate as many variables as you like. So we'll say ACCID equals blah, and we will say variable2 equals, and I'll run this and I'll look at the debug and I can see both variables are populated. One thing to notice about variables is we have a nice option over here. It's called map to URL. So whenever we use map to URL, it's important for whenever you're passing variables or setting variables to the URL. So notice if I'll map to URL and save this. So this helps you in two ways. First, whenever you always want this to stick to the URL and not reset, whenever you're working on multiple pages and the client reloads the page, this could be lost. So you want to use map to URL. And another thing is, so let's say if I set the variable to from anywhere, so let's say on the on-click of a button, I'll say affected elements, and I'll say ACCID variable2, and I'll say set value, and I'll hit apply, and now I'll refresh. Remember, I have one with map and one without, and I'll click this. We can see that our variable2 was changed to AAA. So if I'll change this back and I'll click the button, and I can see that my variable has changed. So it's very important if you want the any change on the variable to apply on the URL as well, you want to use map to URL. Okay, whenever we're working with real Salesforce record IDs, we never want to pass them as they are in the URL since it's not very secure. So what we want to do is always encrypt the ID before we pass it. Any sensitive parameter you're passing to your form, to your Titan web portal, you want to make sure to encrypt it. So how do we encrypt? Titan has in the Titan package for Salesforce a method for you to encrypt any field you like. So this is a flow that I've created before. I'm using the encrypt. So if I'll go over here and I'll say action, and it's called FT encryption util, then all we got to do is tell it what field to encrypt, where to save the encrypted data, and you want it to be like 150 characters long, between 120 to 150, but 150 is great just to be sure. And the object API name, in my instance it's an account, and a record ID, and obviously you can determine whenever you want this to run. So my actions here are very simple. If it's created or updated and encrypted account ID is empty, this is the field where I want to spit out the encrypted ID. I want to run this and populate the encrypted ID. Okay, so let's say now that I have this account and I have the encrypted ID, how do I use it? So let me put this over here. And that's great. And now let's say we want to run a get and we want to populate these fields from the actual account data. So all I will do here, and again, this is just a very, very simplified example. I'll head over to Salesforce and I'll create a new get record. And I'll say I want to get it from the account. And my condition will be very simple. Encrypted account ID. Custom field, again, on the account object that I've created, equals to my ACCID variable, and then I'll put some mapping. Let's say I want to map the name to the name, and let's do account number to number and email to email. And I'll hit apply and I'll close and I'll refresh this, and there is my data. And this is how it's done.